Hi, David Odell here with Odell Complete Concrete. This garage floor has seen better days. It's going to all come out. We're going to put concrete it back in. We're going to do color concrete though, so we want kind of a decorative type concrete floor finish. But you can see there's a lot of movement in this floor, a lot of settling in the ground. And this particular area has some expansive soils. But a lot of this is just due to settling. It wasn't compacted initially. It's a new home, so there was a lot of earth movement when they built this, when they leveled the lot, of course, dug the foundation. So you get settlement for the first 20 years. Usually after that, it's pretty well settled in. So typically you won't get that on the second time around when these houses get to a certain age. Everything's kind of settled in as far as the ground goes. But as we remove it, here's another cause. It was fairly thin. It wasn't really consistent. It varied from 4 inches to about 2.5 inches in depth. That was another issue. And then another problem was it had no steel reinforcement. So that allowed the concrete, after it cracked, it allowed the concrete to just do whatever it wanted to. With steel reinforcement or fiberglass reinforcement, which is what I'm going to be using, what happens is it can still crack, but that reinforcement just holds those sections from shifting, settling, things like that. Also, there's no control lines in here, like control crack joints. We're going to be putting some of those in also, but we're going to be doing it with a saw. We're going to be cutting it in, these lines, because we want to keep the lines as thin as possible, because in garages especially, you're going to be rolling around some heavy equipment. Possibly if you do any kind of mechanical, then you don't want joints, big 1/2 inch radius joints. You just want to roll things over crack control joints that it doesn't get hung up in. And that's the beauty of saw cutting, really. Well, as you can see, this little mini skid steer was perfect for this job. In and out the garage door is really easy. Now over here, actually, as we demoed this, and you always run into this when you get into some properties that are over 40 years old, conversions that have been done. And initially, this is actually a 4-car garage, and a single door actually went through on a drive-through on this far end. They actually had a drive-through at one point, and they closed that up, poured a stem wall on top of the existing slab, and then closed it up with a wall. So that's why we had to bring in the mini jackhammer, the Makita there that you've seen. So we had to crack it right along that stem wall that was poured on top of this existing slab. We didn't really want to pull the slab out from underneath that stem wall that the new wall's setting on, which is right underneath that window. But we got a clean break there in the concrete. The new concrete will just go right up under it and key it all in. Also, we got a new tool we're going to be using on this job, and it's from Makita, and it's their Rebar tire, battery powered Rebar tire. Makita's actually going to bring it out here and demo it for us, give us some tips and pointers how to load them, and go through the whole thing about the tool. We've been using it quite often too since this job, and it really cuts down the time for sure of tying steel together. So as I'm demoing, I'm just using my tooth bucket. I have a smooth bucket also, and I use that just for my fine tuning on the grade. So my tooth bucket I use for my prying, lifting, and then the smooth bucket I like to keep that nice and straight for when I'm doing my grading. Because these tooth buckets, or any kind of bucket, when you start prying on concrete, or anything that's hard to get out, they start to twist and they may get warped on you. So you got to kind of save one straight edge. Because we had this existing slab poured underneath the new stem wall, we're going to raise the elevation in the back of this garage probably about an inch, inch and a half. It'll give it a little more slope out the front doors, but it also gives me some space. We took out very little dirt with the concrete, but we got enough out of there to allow to put this wash sand over a vapor barrier, which is, we're using a 6 mil visqueen plastic. Then we're going to drop this wash sand, clean sand, over the top of the plastic. That was another issue with the previous garage floor. It didn't have the vapor barrier, and the soils, the chemicals, salts and minerals, all the different things that are in the soil that bleed up through the concrete, was destroying the surface of the concrete, disintegrating it basically, slowly but surely. And this plastic will prevent that from happening. So we got about an inch depth of sand in here. Here's the 3/8 inch diameter fiberglass rods. We're putting those in here at about 2 foot centers in both directions. The nice thing about these fiberglass rods is they never rust. You can leave them outside indefinitely and they'll never change. Hi, we're on the job site, and some of the representatives from Makita just showed up and they brought a couple tools for us to try out. We're going to be trying this rebar tire, and we've got a bunch of rebar here in the garage we're going to tie up. And let's open it up and see what it looks like. A little something here I need to cut. Alright, this is for tying rebar. Actually, tie wires, I happen to have that in my back pocket, but I don't think I'll be needing this anymore. Alright, here's what we have. Here's your charger unit. 18-volt battery. Alright, now we're going to start loading some wire in this. Pretty simple. We have to open the cover. This cover is actually a dual purpose. It prevents all the debris from getting in there and then jamming up your gears. It also unlocks the spool. If you had one in there, when you drop it down, it locks it in place. Here's the wire spool. This is just your standard wire. They do make a wire that has epoxy coating on it for different types of environments. Drop this in. Notice I have the battery out. Now, it's crucial when you're unwinding this is that you don't let it spin out freely, because it could come unwound, the wire, and then you have a mess on your hand. So now that we've got it unlocked from the spool itself, we can unlock the jaws here, slide it on through. Basically, you want it to, you feel like it's going to bottom out at one point, and that's where you want to stay with it. Right there. Now that we're all the way in, we can drop this, lock the spool in place, unlock the jaws. Now it's crimped down on the wire so it can actually feed through. And we also have another safety button here. This is your safety button. We're gonna have to unlock that for this switch to function. Click that. We're ready to put a battery in here and get down to some action. Here's a fully charged battery. Pop that in. You notice I have my safety goggles. I also have my sweatband here. prevent any moisture from getting into my safety glasses and impairing my vision. So now I'm ready for business. Let's give it a shot right here. Let me do just a quick pull. See what we got. Oh yeah. There we go. Here we go. Power button's on. Safety's off. And here's your spool. That's what it did. Not wrapped around anything, but you kind of just have to hold it up now. And see that? Oh, that's nice and tight. Let's try another one right here. Yeah, that's not going anywhere. Nice tool. That worked out beautifully. What we're gonna do, since we have the new Makita tying tool, and then we've got the old school ties that we normally use, I've got 10 of these. I'm gonna run this. Tyler
run this.
Yeah, and we're gonna see. I'm gonna do 10, and we're gonna count how many he got. See what the difference is.
See who wins.
And who breaks the sweat first.
Alright, ready? Yep, set, go.
This is kind of like the axe against the chainsaw, huh? Done. 10. Okay, we got 10 here. How many do you got?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17.
So it's almost double. Basically, it's about 2 to 1. This gun does about 2 to 1 of these. Plus, you know, if you're doing it all day long, you're gonna feel it. It's the repetitive motion doing this all day long. It's gonna wear you down for sure. Yep. So, I mean, that's gonna come in real handy for sure. Well, that was interesting. The tool definitely pays for itself, I would say, if you're going to be tying a lot of steel up or fiberglass rods like what we do typically. I mean, so it's an investment, but you know, it frees up a guy to do other things if you have multiple people on a job, or if you just want to accomplish more in a day, then it's worth having. That pin I just drove in the middle, that's for my screed board. That allows me to set a 2x4 into that slot and slide it along as we move the concrete pour out to the front. And I threw a little duct tape on those pins on the stakes. That way they won't slide down on me during the pour, because they have a tendency to do that on steel stakes a lot of times. See, here's this chalk line going, and you can see that we're higher than the old elevation, and that's mostly just to conceal on that one end where they had the slab on top of the stem wall. Now, as we were in this garage, we moved a lot of stuff out of this garage, you know, to be able to remove the floor, like the fridge, a couple cabinets that were screwed to the wall. And then when we got all done doing the demo, I started looking around. I noticed a lot of holes in the drywall, so I just went ahead and patched them, since I was here already anyway. Here's the dowels. We're just using the same fiberglass rods, drilling some 3/8 inch holes and just hammering them in. We're doing red concrete. Whenever you're doing a red or blacks, those two colors really are, those are the ones that really actually will stain a lot, do a lot more staining than some of your earth tones. So that's why we're going to be hanging some plastic all the way around this area for the splatters of the concrete, because we're doing a red color garage floor, which is actually going to be better in the long run. You know, if you're ever thinking of doing epoxy coating on top of a bad concrete floor or something, you might as well just tear the floor out and add the color to the concrete, because it's going to last a lot longer than an epoxy coating will. And in this case, we're going to be integral red color, and then we're going to put a sealer, just a standard nice wet look sealer over the top of it. And now you have a floor that's never going to change colors or chip off the top. The 16 through the wood stakes, they never move, so you don't have to duct tape those. Here's some fiber mesh I'm also going to add to the load. Here's a view looking down the barrel after I threw the fiber in. This color is actually called sangria. It's a Davis color, so it's not a brick red. So it'll be a lighter tone of in the pinks, you know, somewhere in there when it's cured out. But then when we hit it with the the wet look sealer, it's going to bring a lot of, it's going to pretty much look like it is now with the sealer on it. But without sealer, after it cures out, it's going to look a lot lighter. But we will touch base on that, you know, maybe when we come back here to seal it in a month. But you're going to get a good look at this after we saw cut it and wash it down in this particular video. But we will come back on here and do a seal on it, and you'll get to see the sealer going on at some point in time. But we have to let it cure out to do that. We're pouring this nice and stiff. This is at about a 4.5 inch slump. And that's ideal for color. The drier you pour it, the more true that the color is going to match the color on the color chart. Is that more water that you add to concrete with the same amount of color going in as it's recommended on the chart. Like you get, this one I think is 2 pounds per sack of cement is what they recommend to get the sangria color based off their color chip on the chart. Now if you add a lot of excess water, you're not really going to get that color. You're going to get a really washed out look. It's not going to even be close to the color chart. So that's why you don't really want to add a lot of water to color. And especially if you broadcast water while you're troweling, you're going to really change the color. Then of course when you're working the concrete, your final pass, when you get now down to the end of the finish, because we're going to be doing a hard trowel finish on this, like in some areas, if you were to hit this 2 times with the hard trowel in one area and you only hit another area 1 time with your trowel, that color is going to be different than the area you hit with 2 times on the trowel. So everything's got to be hit the same amount of times with color concrete. Otherwise you get different colors all over the place. So there's a few, you know, tricks you got to make sure when you're dealing with integral color, that you have to make sure you stay on target with hitting everything consistently on your final pass. And here's a 1/2 inch radius walking edger provided from Roseboro Tool in orange. Here's a funny float, and the funny float, you can see the lines that it's leaving. That's they don't really come that way with those lines on the bottom. Those are all notched in with a right angle grinder just to draw a little more cream to the top. So it's kind of a customized tool. So here's our first time getting out here on the sliders. I'm running the fiberglass sliders. The reason I like the fiberglass sliders is they're wider, so you don't sink as much as with what you do with a steel slider. Also, they have a little more traction, so you're not sliding out of control a lot of times, especially when you get on a slight incline. Not only that, but I got fiber mesh in the concrete and fiberglass rod, so pretty consistent. This is a new trowel I was testing out. I got from a World of Concrete, that yellow handled one there. Made in Mexico somewhere. And I was just checking out the tool. Seemed pretty good so far, but I'm going to test it a little bit more. Some more jobs and see how it holds up. Because I've never found a trowel yet that really, competes with the Marshalltown stuff. But I'm sure there's something out there. I just, haven't found it yet. So when you have 4 guys out there on the sliders, you can knock them out pretty quick, especially in a small area like this. Yeah, here's the very next day, early in the morning. We're laying out a saw cut pattern. And I'm going to be using the Medusa from Skillsaw. It's a skill saw on wheels, basically. Has a few modifications in there so the dust from the cutting doesn't get into the electrical components. And set up with the vacuum. Has a handle. A really nice tool for doing cutting. And then I've got the DeWalt cordless vacuum also adapted to this. Picks up all the dust so you don't end up with a lot of dust at the end of the job site that you have to pick up or wash down. It's getting about 95% of the dust in that vacuum. Here's some of the cabinets I was talking about we had to take down. We'll put those back up, screw them back in, roll the fridge back in here, pressure wash everything. This is a big paver driveway, and we had, the tractor skid steer out here with tracks. Whenever you're operating on a dark concrete like pavers, anything dark color really shows up tire tracks. So we're going to pressure wash all that. There was a little bit of that, but with the tracks, it was really minimal. So I like this double band cut off of those entries of the doors, because that's where those stem walls are. So they're kind of inset into the garage floor. So those are some crack points. It's also a nice look. So this, even after this cures out, when we put the wet look sealer on here, this is how it will always look. We left that little slab for the water heater. That's why we have that other cut right along that wall, off the corner of that existing slab we had to leave for the water heater. There's your before look. Now here's your after. And of course we will be doing another video with the sealer in about a month. I would say it'll go up. Anyway, thanks for watching the video. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. Have a good day.